The chamber was silent when Representative Jasmine Crockett stepped forward, her voice steady but carrying the weight of a storm behind it. She had spent weeks watching heated debates swirl around decisions that affected millions, and today she had reached her breaking point. Across from her sat Senator John Kennedy, calm as stone, his hands folded neatly on the desk, as if he had all the time in the world. Cameras were rolling, the nation was watching, but in that room it felt like only the two of them existed. Jasmine's heart pounded with the urgency of someone who had seen real struggle and refused to let it be ignored. She spoke with passion about responsibility, leadership, and the moral duty of those in power. Her words cut sharp, calling Kennedy unfit, not as an insult, but as a painful truth she believed needed to be spoken. The room stirred, whispers rising like wind in tall grass, but she didn't falter. She was fighting for the unheard, the unseen, the forgotten, and for a moment, her fire burned brighter than anything else in the chamber. Senator Kennedy didn't respond right away, and the silence was heavy enough to feel like pressure against the ribcage. He looked at Jasmine with the tired eyes of a man who had seen more political storms than he cared to count. Slowly he rose, his movements deliberate, giving the moment gravity that no speechwriters could ever craft. He reached into his folder and pulled out a single device, a small recorder, simple and unassuming. No one in the room expected what would come next, not even Jasmine. Kennedy pressed play, and suddenly the room was filled with a voice, shaken, younger, full of fear and uncertainty. It was Jasmine, years earlier, speaking during a town hall in her hometown, pleading for help on behalf of her community. The recording wasn't one of weakness, but of raw vulnerability. Kennedy did not raise his voice or accuse her of hypocrisy. He simply let the past speak in contrast to her present, and the chamber grew still again. Jasmine felt her breath catch in her throat because she remembered that night all too well. The power outages, the lack of clean water, the closed grocery stores, the elders forced to choose between medicine and food. She had been new to public service then, almost trembling at the podium, begging lawmakers to see the suffering in neighborhoods they rarely stepped into. That recording was not an embarrassment. It was her beginning. But hearing it now, projected across a room filled with polished suits and hard expressions, it felt like someone had pierced open her ribcage and shown the world her heart. Kennedy spoke softly, explaining that the woman in the recording was brave, compassionate, and willing to stand alone when no one else would. He said he did not question her passion or her commitment. What he questioned was whether the same vulnerability still guided her. The room listened, not for spectacle, but for truth. The debate shifted then, not a clash of politics, but of purpose. Jasmine stood silently for a moment, gathering the trembling in her hands into strength. She looked at Kennedy, not as an opponent, but as a mirror to the journey she had fought so hard to forget. She admitted that yes, she had changed, because the world had demanded that she harden, sharpen, and defend herself. She confessed how easy it was to lose tenderness in the constant battle to protect others. Her voice cracked just slightly, and it made every word land with honest gravity. She told the chamber that leadership was not about being unbreakable, but about remembering why you show up in the first place. The silence that followed was not tense. It was human. Kennedy nodded, acknowledging her truth with the faintest curve of a smile that was neither victory nor mockery, but understanding. Then he shared his own story, of early days when he too had spoken with fear in his voice, when he had felt power crush compassion until he struggled to recognize himself. He told the room how easy it was to become unfit, not through incompetence but through forgetting the human cost behind every policy. The tone of the chamber shifted as the walls of ideology thinned, revealing the fragile people behind them. Those watching from home leaned closer, not to witness conflict, but connection. The debate had transformed into something rare. Two leaders rediscovering their shared humanity while the world watched. The media had expected spectacle, outrage, headlines that burned hot for 24 hours and vanished. Instead, they got something they did not quite know how to describe: growth unfolding live. Jasmine spoke again, this time not as the fiery challenger, but as the woman from the recording who had come back stronger, but needed reminding of her own heart. She thanked Kennedy, not for the challenge, but for the memory. She apologized not for her words, but for forgetting the hope that once guided them. Kennedy accepted her words with humility, acknowledging that he too had been hardened in ways he wished he hadn't. The chamber began to breathe again, collective and slow, like a crowd remembering they were made of individual souls. Others spoke up, representatives and senators who had sat in silence for too long, each sharing their own beginning, where fear had shaped purpose. It became less a debate and more a revival of why they had stepped into public service in the first place. The cameras caught faces changed, not politically, but personally. People watching at home felt something they hadn't felt in years: belief. Outside, news anchors struggled to explain it. Commentators stumbled. The internet blinked in confusion. No one had shouted. No one had stormed out. Yet something enormous had shifted. People shared the recording of Jasmine, not to mock her, but because they recognized themselves in her voice. The nation was reminded that even leaders start as human beings, begging the world to care, and that sometimes the world listens. As for Jasmine and Kennedy, they didn't become allies overnight, nor did they agree on every issue afterward. But they treated each other differently, with patience, with memory, with the understanding that behind conviction there is always a story. The next time they debated, there was fire, yes, but also respect, and that changed everything. In the end, the moment became a reminder whispered across dinner tables, classrooms, and quiet bedrooms late at night. Never lose the part of you that once cared enough to tremble. Because the world does not need leaders who are perfect. It needs leaders who remember why they chose to stand.